Hello everyone and welcome to Dissonant Dialogues, Challenges in Classical Music, but we'll probably refer to us as Dissonant Dialogues just for short. I am Emily Zwijack and I'm here with Claire. Claire, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are
Doing
you?
well. I'm doing great. I'm just excited to get back into podcasting and just having more time to chat and talk about all these
Yeah.
important things in music. So we're your co-hosts. Today is just going to be kind of like an introductory sort of thing. So we do have an Instagram page where we wrote like little bios of each other, but here you guys have asked some questions for us that we're going to answer and just kind of talking a little bit more about ourselves, how we got into music, and getting to know us and our diverse perspectives. As down the seasons, we introduce particular topics and get into all that stuff.
And if you don't know, I'm a mezzo and Emily's a violinist. So different instruments, different experiences. And I think our unique perspectives on those two fields will be part of what makes this conversation interesting.
A little general introduction. So, I am Emily. I'm 21 years old right now, and I am a senior at the Chicago College of Performing Arts at Roosevelt University. I'm pursuing two degrees right now. So, one in music education, and then the other is in violin performance. We have it in this program where you can pursue two degrees like this at the same time. It's a very pieced together kind of program because it's a lot of work. So it's put together over 5 years. I'm getting mine done in 4.5. And I think it's going to be totally worth it because, as we'll talk about ourselves, I have a strong interest in not only performing but also teaching. Part of my music ed degree is getting to know other instruments. So, although I talk about violin performance, I have a bit of a perspective on cello as well. Cello is my secondary. I got cello lessons when I was in high school, studied it pretty strongly. I also teach cello lessons, so that's fun. But along with the music ed degree, I had to learn I don't want to say every single instrument, but quite a few instruments. So
Yes.
some more than others I was kind of involved in. So I have a little bit of a range of
Yes.
experience there in terms of instrumentation. Yeah,
And you're a glutton for punishment, so you're doing all the work at once.
pretty much. Yeah,
Yes. Well,
yeah.
I am Claire. I'm 27. I graduated from Chicago College of Performing Arts in 2020. I started in 2015, so I took a little bit of extra time to finish. Wonderful timing to graduate in May of 2020. So I've been out of school a few years and and trying to figure out what my place looks like as I have graduated into a world that is forever changed, and also my struggles with disability and chronic illness and how that affects what my career path will look like. So I don't have a whole lot of impressive resume points to talk about in terms of what I've done since graduating, but I have this, so hopefully it's a starting point. I
Yeah, for
majored
sure.
just in performance, so did not do all the work that you had to do.
Yeah, no, I feel like the music education degree, it's just a lot of classes, like extra
Yeah.
classes you have to take on child development, like classroom management, like that stuff.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I think that's what makes it's so like workload like heavy.
Yeah.
Where for performance majors, they try, or at least they should try, to leave more room for practicing. And I
You
know that
would
that's kind of
think.
being worked on. You would think, right? You would think that. I
Well, it
think
seems like a lot has changed over the time that I've
mhm.
like just hearing what your schedule looks like, it seems like I mean, some things have changed in terms of how they schedule things. I think the pandemic has forced a lot of music programs to look at what they really prioritize and what maybe they were clinging on to because they thought that we should suffer as much as they did.
Probably, honestly,
Yeah.
that's probably it. Because yeah, before I went to school, I know music theory was like, at least I heard it was 5 days a week,
Five days a
Monday
week,
through
8
Friday.
a.m. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when I went, it was 4 days a week, and Friday was like you can go in for help if you need it. And now I think it's down to 2 days a week, if I'm correct, 2 or 3 days a week.
That's
So
amazing. But also, how
yeah,
did they fit everything in? They must really have
yeah,
changed.
I would have failed, like for sure. I couldn't have done it, but that's just me.
I
Um,
almost did. I repeated quite a few levels in theory. Yeah.
All right, so first question I think is always something that musicians are asked is how did we get into music? So what was
Yes.
our moment? I know some people have those moments where it's like, yeah, this is what I want to do, or just how things kind of fell into line.
Absolutely.
Claire, do you want to start?
Sure. I absolutely do have a moment. So for me, I think I was definitely musically inclined when I was little, based on the stories that my family tells. we would have little church choirs and I would go right up to the microphones. They were spaced out for the whole, choir of kids. And when mom would ask why I stepped out of my spot on the risers to go right to the microphones, this is when I was maybe 4, I said I thought I sounded better than the other kids, so I didn't want them to hear the kids. I wish I had just a little bit of that confidence still.
Yeah. Music
Right?
school knocks that out of you, but
Right? Oh, yeah, seriously. And so definitely my mom, my aunts have stories about me asking questions that they eventually figured out were about chord progressions, but obviously I did not have the vocabulary, but asking why songs had a certain pattern. I started begging for piano lessons when I was about 3. But my moment with opera in particular, I was in choir and doing music theory classes from the time I was 4 years old. And I was just enamored with my choir director. I was so shy around her, but I thought the sun rose and set with her. Like I was obsessed with her and completely enamored. And when I was 7, my parents, ironically, I grew up in Texas. They took us on a trip to Chicago. First time I ever went to Chicago. And we went to the American Girl store with my little sisters.
oh,
At the time, Dallas did not have its own American Girl store. And they let us all pick out a doll. And I picked out Samantha, this Victorian or I guess Edwardian doll that at the time I looked exactly like, which is probably why I picked her out. And she
sure.
came with a book that said, Welcome to Samantha's World. And it had all of these pages about the Victorian and Edwardian era life in America at the turn of the century. And these beautiful illustrations about like Victorian doll houses and what the clothes look like and, what different classes we're working at. And some very graphic stories about like factory workers and child labor. And American Girl does not shy away from those topics. But the page that had me captivated was the page on going to the opera. And I just remember this 2-page spread. It had a painting of a famous Victorian opera singer named Adelina Patti. And it was a like painting depiction of her in the Barber of Seville. And it had this, mannequin wearing like this glittering opera gown and the little opera glasses and playbills. And it talked about how back then wealthy people kind of went to the opera to see and be seen, but oftentimes weren't always paying attention. And even though like the tiaras and the opera gloves and everything was beautiful, I was enamored by this little paragraph, this little blurb about Adelina on the side of the page with a picture of her when she was like a 12-year-old and talking about how she became an opera singer. And I just remember looking at that and saying, that's what I'm going to do. I didn't know what opera really was. I'm sure I had some sort of stereotypical idea, and I would be 12 before I got to see my first one. Because my family had moved to the Dallas area from Austin. And at the time, Dallas did not have its own opera house. So you had to drive to Fort Worth, which is about a 2-hour drive. And we had teeny tiny nosebleed seats. My parents with 3 kids, all under 12. My sisters who were not interested. And we went to see Marriage of Figaro, which is a pretty basic first opera to see. And I just remember weeping. The Countess has a big solo. Like, this confirms it. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I had such jealousy to watch someone. I loved watching the live performance, but I just remember the whole time thinking like, that needs to be me. I have to be on stage. I have to do this. And the rest is history.
Oh, I love that. And I love about hearing like people's moments like that. I know a lot of people have it. Not everybody does, but like the people's moments when you have that, it's very special. I love that the way that you described it too. It's just, oh my God, I love it.
Well, I'm very interested in your story because I haven't heard how you got into violin.
Yeah, I guess mine's unusual to say the least. How I got into violin in particular because it started off pretty like average. In 4th grade, we are offered to play a musical instrument, and at my school we have a band and orchestra. And well, to say the least, I have an older brother, and he was in band at the time, a couple years older than me, played percussion. And I had always been like compared to him through teachers in our school, going to the same school, having the same teachers growing up. It was constant comparison. And he was just this successful kid in band. And I'm like, okay, well, just in my head, I'm like, yeah, I have to do band. I have to be like him. I have to follow in his footsteps, do what he does, and be just as great. Kind of sad, but that is what was going through my head.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, well, I have to do band. And actually, the first instrument I really wanted to play was flute. But then someone shied me away from that. There was an adult in my life that had tried playing flute when they were my age, and they're like, "Oh, it's so hard. You'll never be able to do it. Don't even bother." And I was like,
My mom
okay.
was a flute player, and
Oh, really? Yeah.
yeah, it is hard from what I've heard.
Yeah, and it did not help that when they were giving demonstrations of the instruments, the band director, the only instrument she could not make a sound on was flute. So we didn't even get that sound. But regardless of it, I still wanted to play it. I loved it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that shied me away. And hearing this like power adult figure in my life saying, "Oh, it's way too hard. You won't be able to do it." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I'm like, "All right, let me go down like one pitch level, like not one pitch level, but like to clarinet, because I liked the higher sound. I'm like, all right, I'll do clarinet then." So I played clarinet for 3 years then, fourth grade through sixth grade. I even got offered to play bass clarinet, so
Wow.
that was a little part of my life as well in sixth grade. But throughout the entire time, I kind of had shoved away the strong desire to play a stringed instrument because those were demonstrated for us too. And actually, a lot of my friends went into orchestra and were playing in orchestra. And constantly watching them perform in concerts and seeing videos and just always thinking, man, that's really like, I just something about like the strings and the wood, like it was something that I just felt like I had to hold and I had to do and like feel the vibrations. Like I always wondered what that felt like as you play.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a random I don't even remember what the thing was, but there was something that was happening at our school as I was transitioning then to about to transition to junior high. And I had kind of complained to my mom and I was like, man, like I probably just should have done orchestra. Like I would have like done it and I felt pressured to do it or to do band and I never explored it. And she was like, well, do you want to just do orchestra? And I was like, I can. Like, really? That's a thing? And she's like, yeah, like we can like figure it out, make it work. And oh my God, did that bring chaos? The Oh my God, the competition level between band and orchestra, which one was better, was so chaotic, which is
I'm
so
sure.
ridiculous in our school. And people hated me. They hated me. The teacher, the band teacher that didn't even know me from junior high, that knew my brother, hated me like wholeheartedly. Now we're okay, but she really disliked me for that switching. And the thing is, I really wasn't that good at clarinet. I was decent, but I was not that good. So my best friend at the time had played violin, and she offered to leave her violin over at my house one day so I could practice the rest of the day, and she picked it up the next day. And the whole day I just practiced, and I like sped through like the first Essential Elements book on my own. It was so much fun, and I had a summer then to learn in 3 years worth of work. And I had a private teacher. She was like the sweetest lady ever. She was perfect to start off with. She wasn't demanding like you have to catch up, you have to do this. No, it was all about I had the passion, I had the determination, and she helped foster that. And yeah, I went into junior high, and I, to say the least, was better than some of the eighth graders too. Our junior high was seventh and eighth grade, so
Yeah.
and then I became concert master eighth grade year, and I played a solo with the orchestra. I got the National School Orchestra Award, and it was just incredible. But my I guess I kind of had two moments then because I didn't realize that music could be a career, which probably sounds really silly, but I was like,
Can it
oh, I guess
though?
it's just yeah, that's true. Like it's just something people do on the side, I guess. And I
Yeah.
wanted to be a veterinarian, but like once my music director at the time, and I'm still really close with her, and she's like, like you could go into music, you could teach, you could perform, and I was like, I want to do both. Like I could do that. I'm going to do both. Okay. And then I was like, all right, that's what I'm going to do. It's just what I have to do. This is where my purpose lies. Like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then as I had made that decision and things were becoming more demanding of me, I got a new violin teacher that assigned me 7 new technique books in our first lesson. Love him to death. He's awesome. But yeah, he pushed me really hard. Then I got to go see, he played viola and violin, and his wife played cello. I got to see both of them perform in the Illinois Philharmonic Orchestra concert. And that was my first, like, real experience, I guess. I mean, I'd seen the CSO play, but it's so different when you're watching your teachers perform.
Oh,
And it
for
was
sure.
the last minute invitation, and I went, and oh my God, yeah, it was that moment. I remember I was sick that day, like I had a cold and I wasn't really feeling that good, but like the cold just like disappeared. They played Edgar Meyer's Violin Concerto, Never heard of it before, but to this day, it's like one of my favorite pieces. And if you listen to the first movement too, you will get why it was like that moment for me. The piece even like
Yeah.
was almost like an inspiration in itself. The style and everything was incredible. And of course, it was a violin soloist too, so it was like perfect. But yeah, that was that moment. I just knew that then I'm like, all right, yep, this is what I'm gonna do. I have to work really hard, but I'm gonna do it no matter what. And well, I'm still alive and I'm still surviving music school, so I guess it worked.
And how old were you when this happened? Because you were a bit older.
Yeah, I would have been a freshman in high school then.
Okay.
When this happened.
Okay. Because I know you've talked about how a lot of violinists start very, very young.
Yeah, so I started violin then when I was 12. And a lot of people start when they're like 4 or 5, and they come from classical music families.
Yes.
Aside from my brother playing percussion, and he doesn't anymore, like no one else in my family was a musician, so they did not know what they were doing when I started that. I'm very thankful for my teachers, though. You know, they kind of helped my parents figure out what you're supposed to do at the time.
Exactly.
So.
No, that was absolutely something I was going to talk about too, because there's such a difference when you're a singer versus when you're an instrumentalist. I know tons of instrumentalists who started at 3, 7, you know, something like that. I started piano at 7, but when I was like private lessons as a singer, you're not really supposed to start until you're usually the number that I heard thrown around was 16. Is because of just where you are in terms of puberty and your voice. So you're very much encouraged to just do choir until then. And that's something I also wanted to ask about, like, what was your music program like as somebody attending a public school? I was homeschooled my whole life. So for me, I didn't have school choirs or voice teachers or anyone. So I joined my piano teacher really pushed me when I was 9 to audition for the Children's Chorus of Greater Dallas. Very, very prestigious downtown choral organization that had been around since the 90s. And I remember that my mom had me try out for the Collin County Children's Chorus, which is like, it was a like split off of the bigger organization, but a little bit easier to get in. Didn't perform at quite the same level of venues in terms of like prestige. And I auditioned for Collin County first, and the director pulled my mom aside and said, "Hey, if Claire wants a spot here, she's got one, but are you having her try out for Dallas? Because she's honestly better and she should be in the Dallas one if you guys can handle the commute." So I was very lucky to have that resource as a homeschooler because I didn't have access to everything. But I was 15 before I started private lessons. And I think that is where some of these stereotypes come in, that singers are not as intelligent as instrumentalists or don't have as much theory knowledge, because oftentimes we're starting a little bit later in terms of our private training with our own instrument. Even if we're taking other music lessons and we're in choirs and things, you get a lot of that stamina and a lot of those personal habits in your private lessons. And for us, starting too early destroys your voice. That's why those like 7-year-olds who sing opera on, you know, talent shows, that's strong wording here, but that's child abuse. You know, you're taking a kid who's clearly passionate about music and you're exploiting them for the shock value of seeing a child sing. No child can sound like an adult in a healthy way. So that's a little soapbox, but yeah, what was your experience in terms of like what was accessible to you as a public schooler? What do you feel like the quality of the music programs was?
Yeah, it's interesting like how I felt at the time in the program versus now looking back at the program and being like, oh, like Okay, I guess I had it better. I had it in the middle, I guess. In the
Hmm.
time, like I was very flustered. I felt like I was only pushed my freshman year by the seniors in our school, and even then, I wasn't allowed to be in the top orchestra because we had three orchestras, and we just were not allowed. If you're a freshman, you're not allowed to be. So as soon as I got to my sophomore year, automatically I was concert master, and I was still pushed in some ways. I got like a lot of solos. We did St. Paul's Suite that year, so if you know that piece, it was
Yeah.
a lot of solos for the concert master. It was a lot, and I liked having like people that were 2, 3 years older than me, like working right below me. So it was like that constant pressure. They could always like take my spot. So I had that. I also auditioned for ILMEA all 4 years of high school. My directors got me into that right away, like auditioning, and shockingly, I made it my freshman year, and then the rest of my years I made state as well. Yeah, so I had things to like push me. My private teachers were pushing me, and I would do like side programs. Like there was the South Suburban Youth Orchestras, Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestras, Protege Philharmonic. Like I kind of went around to like different groups like that. Because our school program just people were interested in music, but once you hit that high school level, it's like you
Oh
start to
yeah.
kind of figure out, okay, what am I going to do if I know what I want to do and I know it's not music? Am I going to spend my time practicing? Am I going to even spend my time in the program? So
Right.
there was a lot of like splitting off, and the biggest thing is that just a lot of people not practicing. And so
Hmm.
I was flustered because I spent a lot of my time like helping teach, which was
Hmm.
helpful to me, but I also that was my time to play and perform and learn. So I was very thankful to have stuff like outside of our school program. But like
Yes.
looking back at it now, I think my directors did an incredible job with what they could have done given the circumstances in our school program, giving me the extra opportunities and help, like letting me teach and just yeah, we have a really nice like facility as well. It's like brand new, so very lucky there. I say we; it's not like I work there. I think that's a common thing in like public school programs when you have that student that does want to go into music.
Yes.
It's complicated because you yeah you have a huge range of like levels of students and what certain
Yeah.
ones want to do, and yeah, it's I think my directors did handle it well, although I did spend a lot of my high school years, upper high school years, like very flustered in my
Yes.
program, and my teachers knew it, but yeah, they did what they could. It was good.
Did you know anyone else in your high school experience who ended up or wanted to go into music, or were you kind of the standalone in that?
Yeah, there were some that really wanted to teach. Um, and then the two actually that I'm close with, when I was a freshman, there were these two senior girls that I just looked up to so much. They both wanted to go into music. I still have contact with them today. They're amazing. I'm very kind. Both violinists. And little freshman me at the time, we had our solo ensemble. And I was like, oh my God, I should ask them if we can play a trio together for solo ensemble. And like, I was thinking they're going to say no. And I asked them and they said yes. And I was like, I was just, it made my world. And I think that they knew, like, that just made my like life there because it was so cool like little me getting to play with the two older ones. So yeah, like I got to know them pretty well. I think that they were the top ones at the time that I knew that wanted to go in music and that perform today and teach today. But then once they left, it was the thing, there weren't many people. Some would be like, yeah, I want to go into music, and then like back off. Like, no, not
Hmm.
really. So I did feel kind of alone at school too. Not a lot of
Yeah.
people had that interest like me, which is why I was so excited to come to
Yeah.
conservatory. That aged badly, but
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
yeah, I absolutely, I know, for me, I think we were probably similar in that we were kind of nerdy and goody two shoes when it came to like applying ourselves as young kids. And what I loved is that, the majority of kids I was in my chorus with did not go into music. A few did. Um, but everyone was so dedicated. No matter what they wanted to do, they took it so seriously. And I remember occasionally we would get a new student who was a little bit more rambunctious and it wasn't cool. Like nobody admired that kid. Everyone was annoyed and they would get shut down so quickly. Either they would quit or they would get their act together. And I loved it so much because I was like, I don't feel like I'm going to get bullied for taking this really seriously. And I loved that because yeah, a lot of people wanted to go into med school or computer science or something completely unrelated or they just didn't know. But everybody knew that we were a part of something bigger. And those opportunities were really invaluable. And I know for a lot of them who were enrolled in public school, Texas will always favor sports over music programs. And so having access to, at minimum, 3 concerts a year in the major in the Meyerson Symphony Center, which is like the major downtown symphony center, I performed at the opening of our Dallas Opera House before I had ever attended an opera because we performed at the grand opening. So it's really fun to think that there are so many of these really iconic venues that I'm more familiar with the backstage of than the audience. But I know that like finding those opportunities and looking at where schools want to delegate money to can be really, really challenging. And I'm sure that's part of your passion for teaching, is knowing just how many of those opportunities are stripped from kids.
For sure. Yeah. How did we meet and get to know each other?
Mm. Do you want to lay the groundwork for that?
I can try. Okay. Well, Claire and I actually met this summer, so we're recording this end of January 2024. But we met at the end of summer through Instagram, technically. First is, yeah, kind of how we got to know each other. And so I found out that Claire had gone to my school as well. So that was obviously first, and being a musician, that got us pretty close. But she had heard about me first because I had a situation happen to me that I'm sure we'll eventually dive into more and talk
Yes.
about my time at music school, where I was groomed by a professor here and had been sexually assaulted multiple times here. And it was over about a year and a half, 2 year period that had happened and progressed. And my story had gotten out at the time, and Claire reached out to me, and we've talked a lot since. So we'll go
Yes.
more into that another time. But that is actually how we met. And yeah, we talked quite a bit, and
Yeah.
we started off like texting, but then it kind of just turned into like voice memo like
Right.
talking, just because of like sake of like
It's
time
easier.
efficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You could like do the dishes too while you're listening and think, oh
Yes.
yeah, like so we
Our
were
own
almost
private
doing
podcast.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were almost like doing a podcast already. And I used to do a podcast, actually, a music theory podcast. Um, and I just, yeah, I started to really miss it. And I was like, oh, like I always want to get back into podcasting. And I think I said something like, man, we should do a podcast. And you were like down for it. I'm like, let's do it. Okay, cool. And yeah, so here we are. Kind of
Yeah,
came about in an
absolutely.
interesting way. The next question was, what is your dream role or piece to perform?
So I thought I was a soprano until the end of my first semester of college. I like to joke that I got mono and never got my high range back. But realistically, a lot of people have kind of been predicting that's the direction I would go to. Nobody really knows what they are at 18. Um, so when I had been a child, like growing up and attending the opera, all of the roles that I had pictured myself in had been soprano roles. And so my dream roles were like Lucia from Lucia de Lammermoor, which is this incredible opera where this Scottish woman gets forced to marry somebody that she doesn't want to. And the entire final act is just a mad scene where she completely loses her mind, stabs her husband in the marriage bed while everyone else is still partying, because that's how weddings would work back then. Um, and then comes out in her nightgown full of blood, holding a knife, and sings one of the most like complex, incredible arias ever. And I remember seeing that as a kid, and just my mom took me to that one and fell asleep. She's not a night person, but I don't know how you fall asleep through the final act of Lucia. But I just remember looking over at her and being like, "Oh, okay, well," but I was enraptured. I really wanted that role. Um, and Tosca was another big one. And a lot of these roles are very dramatic, very tragic, suicides or murders or something like that, kind of dark. But I live for the drama. I know, like, that's my favorite era of opera, is like the high drama Victorian opera. And then when I became a mezzo, that completely changed what my perspective was going to look like. But I still was very attracted to that high theatrical, grand Victorian opera experience. I'm not a modernist. I'm not a minimalist by any means. I know that it's very trendy to stage things with like, we'll have no furniture, we'll have just black boxes, and everything's going to be like very minimal. I hate it. I hate it so much. Spend the money. I want glitter, and like I want extra. I want all of it. When I found out that I was a mezzo, I knew some of the most famous roles, like Carmen is kind of the most well known for a mezzo. But a lot of what I knew mezzos did was pants roles, which is, where you're playing a like 13-year-old boy. So you're playing a prepubescent boy, which is why they're usually voiced by women. Um, and that wasn't really appealing to me. The first role that I really saw that inspired me was Jake Hagee's opera, Great Scott, had just premiered in Dallas. And my mom's birthday was right around that premiere. So I flew from college home to go see it with her. And it's an opera about opera singers. And the original cast starred Joyce Didonato, famous mezzo, someone I really looked up to. And it was an opera about opera singers and about the culture of the opera world and the music world. I remember the main aria. I still have so much of it memorized, even though I've never seen the sheet music for it. But that was the first time I could picture myself in a mezzo role. Um, there's, this aria where Joyce's character sings to her music teacher about her dreams and says, I wanted to be famous and wonderful, but famous and wonderful weren't enough. I want to matter. If I don't, I'm a dancing dog. I want what I do, what we all do, to mean something, and to reach someone, even one person. I want to transform one life the way you've transformed mine. And talks about what it feels like to wake up the day after a performance and what it feels like to give things up to become a musician, whether it's love or children or, a sense of stability, a sense of sanity. And just feeling like you have this kind of otherworldly call to something. And so that's a role that I would very much love to play. But beyond that, Carmen's a big one. Delilah from Samson and Delilah really sucks. A lot of the best mezzo roles are in French, and my French diction is the most difficult one for me. But yeah, those are kind of some of the high and mighty. Oh, M. Nearest from Aida. That's a big one. And it's Verdi, which again, favorite opera composer. So
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I guess I have a very short answer. Tying back to my other questions, Edgar Meyer's Violin Concerto, very, very difficult, but in maybe another life, I will get to play something like that. Also, Shostakovich's First Violin Concerto.
yes.
I was in the orchestra when we had an incredible soloist. Oh my God, I look up to her so much to perform it. And she's just such a performer. So she gave that piece justice. It was incredible. And Shostakovich is my favorite composer. So
Yeah.
yeah, those two. So is there any venue that we would love to perform at if given the chance? For me, I just really loved getting to play at Symphony Hall in Chicago. It was really incredible. We don't really get to play there much anymore. But it was
Yeah.
definitely an experience for me growing up and seeing the CSO play and then getting to be on the stage myself. I remember the first time I asked someone to take a picture of me and I sent it to my junior high orchestra director just because that was the first time I had gone there. It was a trip with our school. And I think she printed out the picture, she said, and she showed it to her class. And she's like, see, this is what you can get to this stage if you work hard because, they get to watch CSO there too. So yeah, just being there was incredible. And I hear so much about Carnegie Hall. I never been there, I don't even think I've seen a picture of it, but I just hear how incredible it is. So I guess I'm interested in learning more
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to have printout pictures in my bedroom growing up of the view of the stage for the Dallas Opera House, the Met, and the Paris Opera House, because those were like my big ones when I was young. The Paris Opera one is kind of cliche because they use it mostly for ballet now, and they have a modern one they use for opera, but I like the old one. Um, so that's
Yeah.
kind of like a probably would never happen, but fantasy. The Civic Center, I'd be very interested in. I love the Auditorium Theater. We performed there once, but I really it's beautiful. I love all the light bulbs, the exposed light bulbs, and like that design there. And kind of a random one, but the Kodak Theater at Eastman. When I spent a summer there doing their summer program in high school, we performed in their smaller. They have a lot of colleges have multiple theaters and stages, so we performed on the smaller ones typically. But they didn't lock anything, so we were always hanging out in that room. Like literally, I would nap on the benches in there and things like that. It was always dark. But I remember like with my friends from that camp going on to that stage and just looking out and like picturing what it would have been like if I got to perform there. So kind of childhood wish fulfillment things.
Yeah, no, for sure. Same for both of us, I guess. Yeah, okay, I love this one. If we weren't in music, what would we have studied or done? Um, well, I think music's like my whole purpose and stuff, so that's like a really
I know.
interesting thing to think about. Yeah, I mean, prior to music, like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to be a veterinarian, so I really just
Hmm.
loved animals. I was also really into like weather stuff. Like I'd seen a lot of like
Oh,
the
interesting.
storm chasers. And it's interesting for me. It's like tornadoes during the daytime, kind of cool. Tornadoes during the nighttime, not cool because I can't see them when they're coming. So I had an interesting relationship with like weather stuff. But I did
Yeah.
find that really, really interesting. So probably would have been something around those two.
If I wasn't in music, that's so hard. I wanted to do it my whole life. I'd probably be a writer. I probably would have majored in English. I think about how easy that major would have been compared to everything that is music school. Honestly, almost any other degree would have been easier. That would have been something that like I probably would have been a writer or maybe a therapist. I think that's the other
Mm.
thing is something like psychology degree. And that those are probably the only two things I can picture. I don't know that there aren't a lot of other things I'm good at, but I'm definitely passionate about those two things.
Yeah, something that my private violin teacher from high school used to say. He had a student that was like back and forth, like I don't know, I think I want to like major in psychology, or like I don't know, I also want to go into music. I don't know which one to do, and he said to go into music because you'll end up doing both.
It's true. There's a huge overlap. I see so many
Yeah.
people who say that they would have either gone into psychology or music, or they music therapy too. It's
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
strange amount of overlap.
yeah, oh, for sure. All right, how did our families respond to pursuing music?
Oof.
Okay, well, for me, I'd already kind of mentioned that my family are not into music at all, let alone like
Yeah.
classical music background. So they really didn't get it for sure. I didn't really have my parents guiding me. They were supportive financially for sure, and like
Yes.
instruments and paying for private lessons and programs, 100%. Like they wanted me to be involved, they wanted me to be successful. Yeah. It was really the work of my private teachers, though, and even like my school teachers that helped kind of create that path for me
Yeah.
because that was just something that my family couldn't really do. They just didn't have the experience with it
Didn't
and
know what
trying to
it looked
understand
like.
it. And yeah.
Yeah. I'm very similar, super supportive financially. They always worried I would change my mind when I was little, which is why, like, when I was asking for piano lessons at 3, they waited until I was 7. They didn't want to buy a piano if I was going to, like, be bored. But I've never, when I commit to something, I commit. So yeah, it's also not musicians. Some of my extended family has done like musical theater and ballet, but and my parents
Mm.
had taken, some music lessons. My mom played flute, my dad played piano, but not like, past childhood. So yeah, a lot of the thing where they were really willing, especially my dad, to like research teachers and like get really into it. And it is funny because my mom still has very little confidence. She'll always say like, oh, you don't know, I don't know anything about that. Um and my dad now has like strong opinions about things. He really likes like turn of the century to 1920s opera. He loves Czech opera. He likes things that are a little bit more edgy than what I tend to be attracted to. So it's interesting. He was usually the one who took me because he's more comfortable driving downtown and is more of a night owl. So he would take me to the operas when I was growing up. So it is fun to see that he's developed his own taste
Yeah.
over time. But yeah, absolutely. I didn't know this, but they had meetings like with my teachers secretly to like say like, is Claire delusional or could she actually do this? So yeah, they didn't really know what they were doing either. But as long as I was working hard, I mean, I feel like a lot of parents feel like whether you pursue it or not, the stuff looks good on a college, like on a transcript applying for colleges. There's a lot of skills for learning music. I'm sure they would have loved if I found something a little bit more lucrative, but you know.
Yeah, I think that's
overall.
where I can like get away with it is because my sibling is becoming a doctor, so it's like okay, well we
Right.
got the doctor, the financial thing here, so then let her
Yes.
be the little music thing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. See, I've
yeah,
got one who's a lawyer and the other one who studied ballet. So
yeah,
little bit off centered here, but yeah, and
yeah.
nothing to do with my parents. Like my dad's always worked in marketing and like advertising, and my mom's an accountant. So very, very different sort of personalities.
I love this one. Who are our idols and inspirations?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'll kind of start with this and I'll try to make my answers as short as they can be because I have like, I guess, three categories on the top of my head.
Yes.
Um, yeah, starting with, I mean, I feel like people expect me to be like, oh, Hilary Hahn or Ray Chen or like these top violinists, but really, no. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Hilary Hahn's technique. I think it's incredible. But when I think of my inspirations and my idols, number one, I think of my teachers. I
Right.
think about my two private violin teachers in high school, just how caring they were to their students, how hard they worked. I still talk with my private violin teacher from high school, one of them, and like, my God, there's a point where I think he had like 60 students, like private students, and plus just like playing in an orchestra and like just really doing it all. And he was really inspirational to me too because he also has IBS as I do, so he kind of taught me his like tips and tricks like to dealing with it. And at first that was so awkward for me too, and I didn't really know how to go about like I was so uncomfortable even saying I have IBS.
Yeah.
So he was one of the first that like I really had told it to. I was going to be going to a music camp in Wisconsin, and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this with this? And I had talked to him, and just when that clicked with me, I'm like, wait, he has this, but he like plays in these orchestras and he teaches and he's like created this incredible like life for himself. So it's possible. And that was my first moment
Yeah.
where I'm like, I can live, I can make this work. Like I can be just like him. So that was one. And then my current violin teacher, Almeda Vamos, oh my God, I think she's like 85 or 86. I don't think her age is a secret. So she's like much older and she teaches so many private students. Like she has no plans on retiring. She just loves it. And she teaches, so she's giving to her students. She still puts on recitals. She's really an inspiration just to like there's no reason to give up, there's no reason to stop. No matter what happens in your life, you just keep going. Like sometimes in my lessons, like at the beginning she'll tell me like this most horrendous thing happened to her and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, oh, are you okay? She's like, yeah, just teaching. And I'm just like smiling and I'm like, my God. I mean like yeah, she was really just big to me. It's like no matter what happens, you keep going. And then two violinists from my school, I will name them because they know that I look up to them so much. Julimar and Gabby are two amazing
Yes.
violinists. You know Julimar too. I know you know
Jolimar
her.
was in my classes. Yeah, she started when
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, she's the one that played the Shostakovich violin concerto, so that was
Yes.
just amazing. But it's her performance, the way she performs. And she has great technique too, but I cannot keep my eyes off of her when she performs. And that
Yes.
was something
She
that
is
really
a star. Yeah.
yeah, it really opened my eyes up to like you don't just sit there like scared to death and try to play your octaves in tune. No, you like perform. So I love it when she still comes to her studio class occasionally and plays, and
Yeah.
like it's amazing to me. And then finally, lastly, I have to mention this, but there's a Russian figure skater that is a huge inspiration to me, and I can wholeheartedly say is the reason why I am still alive and here well today. Alexandra Trusova, also known as Sasha Trusova, she was known just for her incredible work ethic and starting landing quad jumps in women's skating, which was like unheard of. Really difficult for men to do, but then for the woman's body to do too. She was the start of it all. And I was a figure skater when I was younger, but I'd heard of her more. It's almost been about a year now, yeah, since I heard about like the whole thing that happened at the Beijing Olympics in 2022, and I watched her routine, which was, I mean, a lot of like women figure skaters do like more lyrical, like dainty kind of routines, which is nice, but hers was just total opposite and not what you would expect. Just this like powerful strength, like woman power is incredible to Corolla. And at the time, I was going through a very horrific abusive situation, and she was also in an abusive dynamic with her coaches. And hearing about how she had gotten away from her coaches and created this life for herself and still like kind of evolved into herself, like didn't let them take that away from her, was an inspiration to me to get out of my abusive situation, which I did. So yeah, she is very special meaning to me. Is why I dyed my hair red like a couple months ago. It's been, I mean, it faded out now, but yeah, so special meaning to me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I got kind of civil. I love how you are talking about like personal people, because I think those are some of the best heroes that we can have. I definitely relate. My studio teacher, Mark Creighton, huge inspiration, just really one of those people that from the very first trial lesson I had, he felt like family. Um, and he's a countertenor, and he has celiac, and not similar to my health issues at all, but has talked about what it's like to live with chronic illness as an active working performer. Just somebody I really look up to. I also really looked up to my choir director, Cheryl Phrases Hill. She was really somebody who believed in me when I don't know that I gave her a lot of reasons at first to believe in me. And just an example of how that faith in me that I could feel was very empowering. And it gave me faith in myself. Not everybody takes the time to do that. And teachers aren't perfect, and attitudes in this culture there's a lot of toxic cycles that people get stuck in, but just in terms of who these people have been for me, they were life-changing. My childhood choir director for the children's chorus of Greater Dallas, Cynthia Knott. Again, I always, every time I've had a choir director, I idolize them. I just like get tongue-tied around them. I loved her so dearly, and she was incredible. It instilled me with discipline that I, as an adult, still see people trying to be drilled into in professional settings, in terms of how you walk on stage, your presence, your posture, professionalism. My favorite compliment when we were in choirs growing up was always, "Oh, you guys were better behaved than the adult chorus," if we were doing like something collaborating with the Dallas Symphony Chorus or something. So yeah, just a lot of personal people. But in terms of people I admire out in the world who I've never met, Joyce DiDonato is a big kind of obvious one. My favorite mezzos are Alina Garanza. I saw her in Carmen when I was 13. Very, very famous Carmen performance. That was all I wanted for my 13th birthday, was to go to New York and go to the Met and see her in Carmen. And she's just incredible technique, and a voice type that I think I can relate to. And Frederica von Stade, who is older now. She was also in Great Scott, playing the music teacher. Incredible mezzo. Just her color, her acting, her subtlety. Something I very, very much admire.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and I know Dr. Phrases and Mark also taught one of my classes. He's an amazing lecturer too. Yeah, they're really great people. What are your future goals, and how have you ended up where you are today? So I guess going into the future goals, definitely want to continue teaching private lessons. That comes to violin, viola, cello lessons. I also tutor and teach my own curriculum of music theory lessons. Strong interest in music theory. I'm hoping also to teach at a public school, hopefully middle high school orchestra is kind of what I'm looking for, and that they have like an AP music theory program or something where I can teach that as well. I always want to keep my ties to theory. I'm just nerdy that way.
Yes. You're a genius in that way.
Yeah.
So you agree? What? You think you're
a genius?
And yeah, I mean, I was hoping to be in something sort of like regional orchestras, like Illinois Philharmonic, Chicago Sinfonietta are a few that I really admire that teachers have been in before as well.
They're great.
Oh yeah,
They're
cool.
Great.
Yeah. And then I've played some wedding gigs. I'm preparing for another wedding gig in June too, and just I cry every time. So gigs and stuff like that. Podcasting, little projects like this. I love managing social media pages. I have my own where I manage showing practicing and being in music school, and give funny videos and teaching instructional videos. So some sort of marketing stuff I'm also interested in. A wide variety of stuff. So I hope just mostly to continue teaching and playing, but those are my side interests that I hope will sprinkle around there as well.
Yeah. My goals are also broad. To be okay is a big one right now.
To survive this world, yeah.
I'm a disabled musician. I have POTS and Ehlers-Danlos. I'm sure we'll get into that more in future episodes. And when I leave the house, I use a walker. And that was not the case when I was in college. My health declined after I graduated. I think I was keeping myself together by just sheer willpower. And then as soon as I could relax, my whole body was like, never mind, we're going to fall apart. So figuring out what a career path looks like for somebody disabled in this field that can be extremely judgmental, at times superficial, and not very accommodating, especially when the competition is so high. There's always somebody more connected, richer, smarter, prettier than you. And if you're not able-bodied on top of that, why would they hire you when they have 200 people behind you in line who are? So, you know, I always had a very, very traditional vision of what my dream would look like. I wanted to be an operatic soloist at a major opera company and perform in a very traditional sense. And now my lifestyle has changed. So yeah, being okay, recovering from burnout, it hit me hard. And I have a lot of guilt over what I haven't been doing, and just feeling like I know that passion is still there, but why is it not safe physically for me to access this yet? So I guess sort of recalculating what a career path looks like, and I want to make the music world, the classical music world, a safer place. I want to carve out my own space because I feel, and maybe this will change, ask me again in 2 years, but I feel like beforehand I wanted to get my foot in the door and then make positive changes later when I had power. I no longer feel like I want to be complicit in systems that perpetuate the kind of abuse, systemic abuse that I've seen in classical music culture and conservatory. I've seen so many incredibly gifted, hardworking people who have just been driven out of it because they don't want to participate in that anymore. And I want to make a space for all of us because their voices and their gifts deserve to be heard. So I don't want to participate if I'm not making the world of classical music better in some way, even if it's small.
Yeah.
Kind of
100%.
broad, but yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Someone asked, will the podcast be more personal experiences in music or stories of other people's challenges? Kind of a mix. I know we do have plans in the future to talk about more personal experiences, both my own and some of Claire's. And I'm sure we'll kind of talk about this in the outro, but we're going to have some ways where people can kind of talk about their own stories and we can bring them into the podcast as well. And we'll have like guests and stuff in the podcast potentially in the future. So it'll be kind of a combination. What is something you wish you could change about the classical music world?
Oh, that could be its own episode.
I know. Oh, God.
Power dynamics, I think, is the simplest way to sum it up.
That is the best way to sum it up. Yeah. I was thinking more like detailed problems. No, it's all about the power dynamics. That's where the problems occur. I'll second that. Yeah. Let's just leave it as that. We'll get into it more in the future. Question, are the Suzuki books used by most teachers? I can kind of dive into this. I think this one was asked more on my personal account. As far as I know, yes, the Suzuki books are very, very common in training, even for teachers that don't teach the Suzuki method. Just like myself, I kind of partially teach Suzuki method, but not entirely. I just prioritize music literacy a little sooner. But it's the way that the pieces in the books are arranged and ordered along with like scales and little technical things too that really helps lead into larger repertoire in the future. And you can have little sideways pieces too that kind of go around. So you're almost like developing your own curriculum like within the Suzuki books. But a lot of those songs, yes, are used. So everybody has their own way of teaching through the books. But I think, for a lot of teachers, they're very, very common. I don't think I've met a teacher yet that does not teach out of the Suzuki books. What's something you wish you knew before going into music school? Well, this is really depressing. But for me, I had romanticized it so much, and I had made it seem like this is it. I have to reach this point in life. Like, this is my goal. I was semi-miserable in high school because I just wanted to be with people that were like me and that loved music like me, and that just wasn't something I could get in a high school music program. So I worked my butt off and told myself every time things would get tough, like I just gotta make it. I just gotta make it to conservatory. Then this will be like wonderful. And I ended up getting in my dream school with my dream teacher. Everything worked out. And in reality, a lot of the really dark things that happen in music school are so hidden and covered that a lot of people aren't even aware of it. And
Or
it's
just accepted as
Yeah.
like, this is how you pay your dues. This is what it's going to be.
Yeah, that too. And it was just something I was very unaware of, and I just thought school is safe. School is safe, so why wouldn't music school be safe? So, yeah, I think that I wish that I didn't like make it to be that much, because it was a huge letdown when I realized the reality of it. And I don't want to be like the person like crushing people's dreams and being like, oh,
No,
it's horrible.
but I think we're here. Yeah, we're here to be real with people, and nothing is all good or all bad. And I would rather be uncomfortably honest than hide things from people. That doesn't mean that we have to throw out the baby with the bathwater and say that this industry can't even exist, but it is due for an overhaul.
Yeah, I wish, I guess that I just knew that it's not the most welcoming, supportive environment that they seem. You know, like when you're going to any college and they're like, oh, come to this school, and the happy smiling pictures of the students, like, of course, that's what music schools are going to look like too. But in reality, it is not all like that. And
everyone's having a mental breakdown in the hallway.
That too. And yeah, it can be the complete opposite, where people are just 100% not supportive of you and things can be really dark. So yeah, I wish that I was just aware that this can happen. I'm not going to say it will happen to you, but these things can happen. Just be aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely second that. I don't think it surprised me how hard it would be. I mean, there's no replacement for experience, so I didn't know, but I expected it to be very difficult, and it was. So some of it's more personal. I wish I had known about my health issues before I started school. That would have given me a leg up, because I was figuring out all of that in real time while trying to schedule doctor's appointments while you're not allowed any absences, and and that was very, very difficult. There was no way this could have happened, but I wish I had known that the pandemic was coming. I also wish that I had known more about high control environments. We'll definitely probably get into this in future episodes, but I came from a very, very high control church that I grew up in, that not everyone would, but I would classify, and several hundred people who've gotten out would also classify as a cult. And jokes that my friends say is the fastest way to get out of one cult is to join another. And in a sense, music school is definitely a high control environment. And I know things now about like the BITE model, which is a tool for recognizing cults and high control environments. Not saying that this kind of program can't exist or that there is nothing redeemable about it, but I wish that I had started the process of learning about some of this stuff earlier, because I think I could have been stronger in myself had I known what to look for and what to not take so seriously, because there's a lot of grandstanding, there's a lot of professors and sort of institutions that will tell you this is the way things are and they'll never be any different, and if you don't like it, you can leave. And that's only true as long as we let it be true.
Yeah. No, music school is like walking through a field while people are like shooting at you from everywhere. It's like walking through war. And I think that's just something to be aware of. It's like, and no one wants to admit this, but in every single way, there are going to be constant attacks at you to just give everything up and to quit. People will say it straight to your face too.
Oh yeah.
And
this
really,
is hard for you. Maybe you shouldn't be here.
To make it through, to go to music school in general, but to make it all the way through, I think is a huge success in itself.
I mean, I saw so many dropouts, and they love to. I think this isn't unique to our school. A lot of conservatories love to brag about their dropout rate as though it is what makes them selective and impressive. Look, it's so hard that people are dropping out left and right. Not everyone can do this. Rather than looking at things like a 50% fail rate for a class and saying, maybe there's something going on with us. And that lack of like accountability within themselves it's very discouraging. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect how much they don't want to teach you. They almost just want to polish you.
Extreme rapid fire. I called this one questions courtesy of Joe, which is Claire's husband. Why are baritones so handsome?
So they can get the mezzos.
Okay. What concept was not taught early in your musical education that you wish had been taught on day one? Correct technique. So for me, I mean, this is complicated because, like I said, my first violin teacher, she knew my passion was there, so I don't think she wanted to like be really critiquing and like on me to like destroy that love for music. But I already had it and I already wanted to practice. So her being so carefree about the bow hand and about left hand technique, it was a pain because then I had to work on that, breaking all these bad habits later on, which was very discouraging to me and made things worse for me. So for me with my students, I'm proper technique right away, right on. Otherwise, like, I mean, we make things fun as well, but there's ways to make technique fun. So that's something that should be taught right off the bat, right away, correctly.
That's another thing that's difficult with singers. A lot of people will say you don't learn technique until you're like halfway through college because proper technique is damaging if you're too young. There are probably some people who would fine-tune that a little bit more than the way that I'm putting it. And obviously science is updating all the time. Maybe some of my information is out of date. But everyone would like say like up until maybe my second year at school, like they didn't even use the word technique. And certainly not when I was taking lessons in school. So that is interesting because, you do feel like their goal almost when you're young is to not mess anything up. They're just like, we don't want to do anything too intense because we don't want to damage you. And then later when you it's almost like you're not supposed to be doing this at 18. It's almost like the timeline doesn't work. I wish I had a lot of theory. Like I was taking theory from the time I was 4, and yet I still very much struggled with it in college. I wish that there was more awareness of learning differences and potential learning disabilities in how we teach theory, because we have a lot of research in that for reading, math, sort of your basic things. But when it comes to learning differences in a more niche field, we don't. We teach it one way, and if you don't get it, you leave. So I wish that I had somebody who had noticed some of my issues with visual processing and potentially, some of what was actually at the heart of my learning style, so that I could have gone in with a stronger foundation in theory and more confidence in that.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a wrap of the very first episode of the podcast and of season 1 in general. I hope this kind of helped to give you a little bit of an idea of Claire and I's backgrounds in music and just who we are as people. Our next few episodes will be diving into more particular topics, and then eventually, adding on some guests and talking about some of our own personal experiences and getting more into everything. So if you have any questions, any ideas, stuff you want to talk about, if you want to be a guest on the podcast, you can reach us at our email, dissonantdialogues@gmail.com. We also have a phone number, so this is a little thing we're going to call curtain calls, where it's automatically set to voicemail. So if you call the number, it will bring you to the voicemail. We'll be able to listen to it. We can even play it on the podcast, and you can leave any suggestions, ideas, questions there as well.
That's right. That number is 872-216-9032.
We also have an Instagram and a TikTok, Dissonant Dialogues. So you can go on there, give us a follow. We'll kind of share some, behind the scenes of recording the podcast, some really top moments of each episode stuff, like we'll edit for the social media stuff. That's pretty much it. So see you next time.
Bye. I remember I refused to have dolls who were blonde with blue eyes, because I was like, too many dolls and too many princesses are blonde with blue eyes.
In the top program, or top. I really hope that ambulance is not that loud in the background.
I can hear it a little bit, but I'm sure I can edit.
Okay, I was gonna say, for people listening, we're just gonna hear that because unfortunately I'm right in Chicago. Yeah, so we'll just get used to it. I know you can hear the train.
All right, get back in the closet. Where's my cat?
Thank you.